You are now watching the True Mets Talk podcast live stream. We will be going live shortly. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.
Shallow right field, stumbling start for Stewart. It's drilled to deep left field by Alvarez, and that's going to go in 4 straight games for the second time. He's homered in 4.
What is up, New York Mets fans? Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. Happy Friday, November 8th of 2024. Welcome in, everybody, just as the clock strikes 2 o'clock on this Friday. As always, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you are new to the channel, and make sure you drop your thoughts and opinions in the live chat section. I understand we're going a little bit early today. It is not a part of our usual scheduled programming time. Usually we reserve these off-season live streams and the hot stove live streams for later. Unfortunately, due to my schedule, I cannot be going on later with Rob, but he got you all covered. He's got you all covered with some stuff on his channel talking about the Mets off-season over there. Again, please drop those live chat comments, vote in the live chat poll. I want to have a very interactive session here with you all because we've been hearing a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, a lot of reports, whether they're true or not, or whatever degree of truth they have to them. We've been hearing a lot surrounding the New York Mets, and that is no shock as the Mets are going to be spending big this offseason, and there's a lot of different routes David Stearns and Steve Cohen can take, but a lot of differing reports out there that I wanted to come on here and talk to you all about on this Friday as we kickstart our weekend. So want to take a minute to shout out my guys in the chat. Darren, appreciate you, LGM. And we do have Midday CP right here on YouTube. Ibby, I appreciate you. Willy Adames. Talk your shit, CP. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. We will be talking about Willy Adames in this live stream. If you missed the Willy Adames discussion that I had, I actually dropped a video on Willy Adames a couple of days ago. I'm going to link that in the description down below. I got some great feedback from people in the comments about their thoughts and opinions about a potential reunion of Willy Adames and David Stearns. So we'll talk about that here in just a second as well. But as per this graphic, how can we not start the conversation off surrounding the latest report from Mike Puma of the New York Post, basically stating that Steve Cohen will be traveling to the West Coast. He is going to California to meet Juan Soto and Steve Cohen. I dropped a short on this as well, talking about this very situation, this very report earlier today. Make sure you go ahead and check that out. Hit the thumbs up on this video, obviously, and that short. But listen, the Juan Soto sweepstakes are on. They are going to continue for most of this month, probably maybe even into December. I'm not entirely sure if we have a timeline or even if Boris and Soto have a timeline in terms of when they want to make a decision by, but 100%, this is going to be a close race in terms of the sweepstakes for the services of Juan Soto, but I don't think it's going to be a race between a lot of different teams. Now, obviously, the reports, there's been a flurry of reports saying that the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be in on Juan Soto this offseason. Miss me with that. That is absolutely not happening. There's no chance Juan Soto goes to Tampa Bay. There's other reports saying that the Blue Jays are looking to spend big this offseason and that they will be in on the sweepstakes for the services of Juan Soto. I don't buy that either. The most teams that I realistically see being in these Juan Soto sweepstakes is 3 teams. Obviously, the Mets and the Yankees, and I've been on record, both here in my videos and on X at CPNY Sports. Make sure to follow me over there. Basically stating that the third team that I foresee potentially being in on Juan Soto in addition to the Mets and the Yankees, are the Boston Red Sox. Those three teams and those three teams alone. Yes, the Giants are probably going to make him a contract offer. Maybe the Padres and the Dodgers could also offer up some money in a contract. But with what we know or potentially know, again, nothing is set in stone and nothing's concrete, that Juan Soto presumably prefers the East Coast. Now, given that, obviously, the race is really going to be between two teams because the Boston Red Sox are also on the outside looking in. And this is going to be between the Mets and the Yankees. And you see here, obviously, I didn't have to do this, but I did in terms of giving you all a picture of the type of season that Juan Soto had. 157 games in the pinstripes as a Yankee, 288 batting average, over 100 RBIs. The OPS was approaching 1,000, which is tremendous. And he tacked on 41 home runs and 31 extra base hits in the doubles category. An absolutely phenomenal season offensively. Now, obviously, he was a Gold Glove finalist in right field. He doesn't provide worldly defensive capabilities. And we know that about Juan Soto, right? We know that. And we accept that because we accept how great of upside that he has with his bat. Now, the question is as Steve Cohen is going to the West Coast and having these conversations, right, with Juan Soto and his familiar friend, Scott Boras, the question of the money is going to come in. And the primary talking point between the Mets and the Yankees is this notion that the Mets have to outbid the Yankees by a large margin. And if the offer is anywhere close to what the Yankees have to offer, then he's going to stay in pinstripes and remain a Yankee. And to that, I say that's a bunch of baloney. That's a bunch of baloney. He spent one season as a Yankee, obviously with the likes of Aaron Judge, and no disrespect to the rest of that lineup. That's about it. They were a dynamic duo for the regular season, but you saw in the playoffs, Aaron Judge, as per usual, quieted down a little bit. And Juan Soto had to carry the team a little bit on his back, so to speak. And so for the people saying that the Mets have to blow away, the Yankees offer, my question is why? Why do they have to blow away the Yankees offer? Yes, they have to outbid the Yankees, presumably, right? That is going to land Juan Soto, and that could be said for any team. But why do they have to blow that offer out of the water? What are the Yankees going to provide Juan Soto more so than what the Mets can provide? Someone please enlighten me. Beside the whole, he's a Yankee, the pinstripes are iconic and all that, what else is there to offer Juan Soto? He's not going to go down as a top 3 Yankee of all time. He's not. He's really not. The Yankees are also in flux because when you take a look at their payroll, they're already starting off at a higher figure than the New York Mets are. And if Juan Soto takes up 45, 46, maybe even $50 million of that payroll on top of what they're already rolling into the 2025 season with, they have less to spend in other areas, which is also the case with the Mets, obviously. But the Mets have more financial flexibility than the Yankees, and they also have an owner that's willing to spend more and get back to that $300 million payroll, presumably, whereas the Yankees owner, Al Steinbrenner, was a little bit wary of making that same commitment to the Yankees. So again, I get it, right? The Yankees are obviously an attraction for any free agent. Juan Soto, it's going to be close. It really is going to be close in terms of his decision. But why do the Mets need to blow the Yankees offer out of the water? That's been, and that might be just like a feel-good thing with Yankees fans. Yankees fans, if you're in the chat, let me know if this is how you feel, but it almost seems like this is what they're clinging on to because they realize that the Mets are right there and Steve Cohen is going to do everything in his power to take him away from the Bronx. Just saying. I'm just saying. So again, we can talk about logistics. We can talk about how many years. We can talk about the AAV. Realistically, I don't really care about the actual contract total. So everyone's talking about him making the highest contract value in total, surpassing Shohei Ohtani, obviously being $700 million. People are talking about him getting $701 million. That really is meaningless to me. That might mean something to Scott Boras and Juan Soto. But for me, I don't think it's realistic to see a $700 million contract to Juan Soto. And I might be wrong. So John in the chat, if I know it all, I just admitted I might be wrong. But again, I like to look at the AAV. And obviously, it takes into consideration how many years is going to be on this contract for Juan Soto. It could be 12, 13, 14. And that's the difference of paying him until he's 38, 39, or 40 years old, with him being 26 years old right now, entering free agency, which is a rarity. A lot of players, when they enter free agency, they're already in the primes of their careers, being 29, 30 years old. You see it with Pete Alonso, and we'll talk about Pete Alonso here in just a second. But when I look at the AAV, obviously, I think Ken Rosenthal stated that the bidding price could get up to $50 million AAV. I think that's the absolute max in terms of paying Juan Soto. And I honestly think that could be already too much. But if Steve Cohen needs to do it, then he needs to do it. And $50 million is what it is. But for me, $45 to $50 million, anywhere between that. And I think that Ibby, which I appreciate this comment. I think you know a good amount, CP. I appreciate you, Ibby. And make sure you guys subscribe to the Till Mets Do Us Part podcast. They were talking Juan Soto on their latest stream as well. And I think that in that stream, because I was in the comment section and we were kind of having a little bit of a back and forth, we were talking about, what the AAV could look like. And I think that we both kind of came into this understanding that $48 million, maybe even 49, right? And again, 50 if you have to, is like the sweet spot for Juan Soto that could do it for any team, whether it's the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Mets, etc. So again, 400. Okay. Anyways, yes, I'm started getting sidetracked here with the comments section, so I apologize. I'll get into the comments here in just a second. So again, how much money do you think gets it done for Juan Soto? Is it a 12-year deal? Is it a 13-year deal? 14 even? I think it's going to be 14. I think it's going to be obviously over 500. I know Spotrac has their valuation set at what they have it set as. I think they go as low as $36 million AAV for Juan Soto in his next contract, which is, there's not a chance that happens. But what do you all think? Juan Soto, which team? Do you think it's more than a 3-team race? Or is it just up to a 3-team? Or is it a 2-team race only between the Mets and the Yankees? So, Luis is saying 14 for 665 for Juan Soto. Jr. is saying 13 for 660 plus. I love this comment the most by John, talking to the other John who taught you grammar, because the other John is basically saying that I know it all. You and Rob think you know it all. I appreciate it. I'd like to think that I know a good amount. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know it all. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. But I think these are appropriate discussions to have surrounding Juan Soto when you talk about a competition that's going to commence here shortly between the Mets and the Yankees. And that competition is not only surrounding the name of Juan Soto, that also extends to Mr. Pete Alonso. All right, I got to get him out of the chat. Anyways, we remove people who are going to bring our energy down on Friday. It's Friday, people. We're having a great time. I appreciate it. Thank you all for everybody commenting. Jay saying Soto will either want to be another Yankee great or the greatest Met of all time. Does he want to hide? If so, he'll go to the Yankees. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, in terms of cementing his legacy, right? The Yankees are a historic organization. We know how many greats they have to offer. And again, it could not be a legacy thing for Juan Soto, right? That could not be the driving factor of his decision. Again, we don't know. It could be money-based. It could be wanting to win. I think Boras said there's a mixture of both. And why would he not say that about one of his clients? But again, I think that Steve Cohen going out to California next week is huge, first and foremost. But you have to have an initial starting point if you're Steve Cohen. Obviously, Scott Boras is going to do what he does best in terms of getting his client the most money. He's going to come up with a figure, and I'm basically explaining the principles of negotiation coming into the middle of an agreement between the two parties. I know that you guys don't really need that explanation, but again, when you talk about Scott Boras, you're going to get as much pushback as possible with the initial price point that you set, and that could cause some troubles for, GMs and front offices that are negotiating with him. Mets have $100 million less on the payroll compared to the Yankees over the next 5 years as well. That's a great point, Ibby. 100%. I believe the last time I did my math in terms of these two teams, I actually did a live stream about this, and this was one of my talking points, saying that going into the 2025 season, if everything remained consistent as of right now, 2:14 p.m. on November 8th, the Mets are going into the 2025 season with around $151 million on the books. And then the Yankees are just over $200 million on the books right now. So even given that, right now, as free agency starts, there's a $50 to $60 million gap between these two teams. And then obviously that's not considering any signings that have already happened to a lesser degree and everything else that kind of is defined as the nitty-gritty of the payroll. That's just the most pressing issues of a payroll day in and day out. Salute to Junior. Salute to everybody in the chat. Really. Is Soto in love with the idea of playing with Judge, that he'll sign back with the Yankees? And that's another thing, too. That's a great point, Jeremy, in terms of being in the shadows of an Aaron Judge in a Yankees uniform. That's Aaron Judge's team. And honestly, the Mets, you can consider the Mets as Francisco Lindor's team 100%. But I don't think the shadow, right, would be as great. And I know that we're talking kind of semantics here and that this could not matter at all in the mind of Juan Soto. But these are all small little factors that may play into the decision. It may or it may not. As a Yankees fan, you're hoping it doesn't. As a Mets fan, you're hoping it does. And that could be the difference. But the ultimate difference here, obviously, is what's underneath Steve Cohen and on top of him. And that's the money sign. What is the money going to look like for Juan Soto? Because the highest bidder probably is going to get him. That's right. Jeremy saying, I wouldn't underestimate the Dodgers possibly being in on Soto after their magic act with the Ohtani contract. I'm worried. I'm not worried about that, Jeremy, and I don't think you should be as well. The areas where you need to worry about the Dodgers are a guy like Willy Adames or a guy like Corbin Burns or maybe even a Max Fried. That's where you worry about the Dodgers. For Juan Soto, I'm not quite worried about any West Coast team. I'm not going to lie to you. I could be wrong, but I think it's a pretty safe bet that the Dodgers won't seriously pursue Juan Soto. But again, we're sitting here on November 8th. Free agency just started a couple days ago. We're talking about early reports. Nothing solidified. Everything's essentially a rumor at this point, minus one report that we'll talk about from an unconfirmed source regarding Willy Adames. But yeah, 100%. Darren saying 14 years at $50 million a year is $700 million. It could be the case. And I could see that happening. I know a lot of Mets fans, not a lot of Mets fans, because Mets fans such as myself and Rob and a lot of other Mets content creators are like, this is not our money. That's firmly in the camp that I'm at. This is not our money. If you find a way to put a competitive roster out there while paying Juan Soto $50 million a year for the next 14 years, so be it. Do it. If there needs to be deferrals, which is also something that Steve Cohen could explore, a la the Ohtani contract, you can do that as well. I'm not sure if Scott Boras is going to be willing to do that, right? But that's an avenue to at least negotiate. So, and certainly not as much deferred money as that Ohtani contract, but you can defer some to the back end or even in the next few years after the 14 years is done. So, appreciate you all being here with me, though, on this Friday afternoon. Hit the thumbs up on this stream. Go check out all the previous content. A lot more off-season content in the works on this channel from me. Subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff, and keep dropping those live chat comments. I love to get to as much and as many comments as I possibly can while keeping the flow of the conversation here, because we do have to talk pitching as well. Mets starting pitching hunt. And the latest and greatest from Mr. Jim Bowden, who is a known Mets hater. And I hate to bring his reports into the fold of things here, because Jim Bowden last offseason, if you remember correctly, had a lot of unpleasant things to say about the Mets and the type of offseason that they were going to embark on in terms of being not as high of spenders and basically throwing away the 2024 season, which ended up being simply not true. But Jim Bowden basically had a report saying that the Mets are going to prioritize the starting pitching staff. And honestly, it's kind of hard to argue that, because I think anybody with common sense and anybody that's been paying attention to the Mets knows how many free agents and pending free agents they have in their starting pitching rotation. John Manaea, Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, etc. So you need to fill in this rotation and you need to solidify it, right? You can go through the 2024 season and get the sort of production that you got from the guys that are on short-term deals, but at some point you have to go all in on the rotation, and that would be, right, multi-year deal contracts. And I'm not saying you have to go up to 6, 7, 8-year deals for some of these guys. There's a lot of different avenues. There's a lot of different pitchers on the market that have different contract valuations. Some guys you can potentially go after on a 2-year deal, maybe some like a Blake Snell on the 4 or 5-year deal. And then there's other pitchers, your premier cream of the crop pitchers like Corbin Burns, that'll be after a 6, 7, 8-year deal. And that's exactly what Jim Bowden said, is that the Mets and David Stearns are going to prioritize first and foremost Corbin Burns this offseason. Now, this is, Jeremy, if you're still in the chat, this is where I kind of fear the Dodgers, because we know Corbin Burns is a West Coast guy. We know the eye emojis that he quoted after the Dodgers won the championship, which was kind of strange, but he did it on his X account. This is where I fear the Dodgers swooping in and getting another premier pitcher. Let's not forget they also have Tyler Glasnow. Let's not forget that. Let's not also forget that the Dodgers have Shohei Ohtani coming back to pitch presumably next season. Oh, and let's not forget that Roki Sasaki is going to be posted presumably, and the Dodgers are going to be the favorites to land him. So a lot of merry-go-round type of events that are playing out already in free agency in terms of the storylines that are going to commence. So, but the Mets have been linked to these two names, Garrett Crochet and Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns last year, and the seasons before that, in a Brewers uniform. This was his first season as a Baltimore Oriole, probably will be his last and only season as a Baltimore Oriole. I do not foresee them re-signing Corbin Burns. But in 2024, there was a lot of speculation in terms of how he was going to produce. There's a lot of speculation surrounding Corbin Burns in terms of the velocity. Is that going down? Is the strikeout capability going down, as we've seen from 2022, 2023, and this past season in 2024 with the overall strikeouts for Corbin Burns? But another ace-type season for Mr. Burns. 193 innings pitched, and I don't know why that says 0.4 because that's impossible, so I apologize. Let's call it an even 193 innings pitched, give or take. 2.92 ERA. 181 strikeouts, and a 1.10 whip. That is ace-like output from Corbin Burns. And I know there's a lot of speculation in terms of the trajectory that Corbin Burns might go down if you give him a 6, 7, 8-year deal. But at some point, as we've said with Juan Soto, as Mets fans and the Mets organization, particularly the fans, because this is really the only thing that I hear from the Mets fans, and I don't really see that from Stearns and Cohen in terms of the lack of willingness to spend. There's a lot of instances, and it's not only related to Corbin Burns, but also people in Mets land, a part of this fan base that are afraid to spend on Juan Soto. And I get it. Be smart, You can allocate your money in a lot of different ways. I understand the thought process. But when a premier generational talent like Juan Soto presents himself, when an ace like Corbin Burnes presents himself, you gotta dish out the money. And obviously, I think per Jim Bowden's report, Corbin Burnes is 1A on the Mets list. They're going to have a lot of competition for him, and he's also 1A on my list. Whether it's realistic or not, obviously depends on the other contracts that the Mets may or may not give out. So that's kind of how I assess that. But again, I have no fears about Corbin Burnes and his output and the trajectory that he will go down, particularly in the front end of a long-term deal. The other name is a lefty, and it's not Blake Snell, it's Garrett Crochet. And the unique thing about Garrett Crochet is going to be that he is under contract for 2 more seasons if you trade for him. So I think he's arbitration eligible next season. I think he's actually already arbitration eligible. But anyways, he's set to hit unrestricted free agency in 2027, which is awesome in terms of team control. That's like a dream for David Stearns and a lot of other GMs out there around Major League Baseball. But as people in this fan base, myself included, I've been on record saying this, and a lot of people in the chat have been saying this, you know, the worry of how established really is Garrett Crochet. He had a phenomenal campaign in 2024. That was really his only productive and complete campaign of his career so far. 146 innings pitched, 3.58 ERA. I mean, the guy throws gas 97 miles per hour as a lefty. He's got a great arsenal. He's got great movement. He's got great deception with his motion. 209 strikeouts. I'm making errors all over the place here on these slides. I apologize, but the 209 supposed to be strikeouts, which is great. Anytime you're around 200, 200 plus, obviously as a starting pitcher, you'll take that all day long. And a 1.07 whip. This guy has a lot of talent, and he's got a lot of potential to be a consistent ace on any pitching staff. It's not going to be with the White Sox because I really do think that they've already delayed the inevitable in terms of rebuilding. I really do think this offseason, whether it's Robert Jr., Crochet, or anybody else that they have to offer, that they will be offloading a multitude of players. So again, a lot of teams will be in on a potential trade. And I think that really what they're looking for are prospects and already MLB ready young talent from a position player standpoint. And so if you take a look at the New York Mets, they have a plethora of that. Guys that have already made it to the MLB in a short sample size or are just on the cusp of making it to the MLB in terms of position players. And the Mets could be in on a guy like Garrett Crochet. Now, again, we don't know how he's going to translate, being 2024 was his only season producing over 100 innings of work. But the guy is mad talented. He is extremely talented, ladies and gentlemen. And I would not be upset if the Mets pursue him. And obviously, you're not really giving up any significant financial compensation in terms of adding that to the payroll because he's arbitration eligible and he's under contract for the next 2 seasons. Let me get back into the comments here. Ibby saying Mets fans cry when they don't go after guys. Now the guy is available and they want to talk themselves out of it. Insanity. Sign Soto. Yes. Yes, Ibby. I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. Let me take a sip of water here as I am a little bit parched. Going on 30 minutes onto this stream, but what Ibby is saying, I'm going to leave this comment up for just a second because Mets fans, if you were confused about where I stand with the Juan Soto discussion, this is where I stand, what Ibby is saying. How many innings did Crochet pitch to get those 200? So the 209 is strikeouts. 146 is actually the innings pitched for Garrett Crochet last season in 2024, Darren. I apologize. That is a typo. That is a typo on there. But yeah, obviously, this isn't a deep starting pitching free agent market, but there are a couple of aces to be had for the New York Mets when you talk about Corbin Burnes, Garrett Crochet, Blake Snell, Max Fried, who I'll talk about briefly here in one of my last slides of this show. But again, I think that the primary focus obviously is going to be Juan Soto, but then you have to shift your focus back to the starting pitching staff, and you have to add on to a rotation of Kodai Senga, who has a lot of uncertainty surrounding him as well in terms of the injury category and how he's going to progress. And in terms of if Sean Manaea is going to be in this rotation and a part of the New York Mets in 2025 and beyond, which I really do hope he is. I really hope the Mets are able to reach a contract. I wouldn't say extension, but obviously re-signing Sean Manaea, who is obviously represented by Scott Boras as well. And Scott Boras already went on record and stated the obvious in his media day availability a couple days ago, saying that the market is vast for the services of Sean Manaea. And there could be a bidding war between the Mets and other teams on that front, given the lack of lefty pitching availability. You talk about Blake Snell, Max Fried, Manaea, obviously Crochet via trade, and obviously Kikuchi as well, being a lefty. So, hey, Cameron, how are you doing? Stevie's saying the merch sales alone will already pay a good chunk of Soto's contract. Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is that the revenue that teams will get in terms of everything surrounding the jersey sales, the tickets, everything else that you don't see up front from an organization's day-to-day operations that you will get to sort of pay that contract for itself. I don't know if it'll pay for the contract valuation as a whole, if you're talking $600, $700 million, but again, it'll pay for a portion of that 100%. So these are the rumors right here. Jim Bowden's basically saying that the Mets are going to be in on Corbin Burnes heavy, and then you have Buster Olney. Yes, the Mets fan base beloved reporter, Buster Olney, of ESPN, saying that Garrett Crochet is going to be traded and the Red Sox and the Mets are going to be the two teams predominantly, in his opinion, in on Garrett Crochet. Again, the disclaimer that I want to put out to you all is these are just speculation reports. At the end of the day, no matter what, this early into the offseason, these are speculation reports. Nothing concrete is backing these reports. You would have to imagine, unless it's coming from a guy like Jeff Passan, honestly, or if you want to go to a guy like Will Salmon, who actually covers the Mets and is usually reliable, because those guys never jump the gun in terms of giving reports out for the sake of giving reports out and being the first to do it. They wait until all sources are verified and the real thing is going to happen. So again, as we are talking about this, these are just rumors, which is why I stated that directly in the title of this video. But let's talk about Mr. Willy Adames as Oliver, and it's good to see Oliver back in the chat. Signing Adames will make it easier for Winker to meet him in the parking lot. Oh, man, I can always count on Oliver for the comedic relief. I love it. Yeah, obviously we know the history right there between those two guys in the wild card series. And let's talk about Willy Adames, because we have seen a lot of reports surrounding Willy Adames. Actually, before I want to get into Willy Adames, let's talk about Pete Alonso, because obviously I think that people are starting to realize the sort of market that will shape for Pete Alonso if he is not a New York Met in 2025 and beyond. The Yankees have officially checked in on Pete Alonso. It makes complete sense, especially if they lose Juan Soto to the Mets. Pete Alonso could be a great backup option for them. Well, Anthony Rizzo, free agent, he's gone. Pete Alonso, you lose the home run production, you get it right back with the services of Pete Alonso, right? If Juan Soto walks. But in comparison, or I should say in contrast to the Mets, the Yankees, there's no world where they can sign both Juan Soto and Pete Alonso. It's just simply not going to work with what they have planned for their payroll. In contrast to that, the Mets can. There is a world, and you can call me crazy, but there's a world where you can sign Juan Soto and re-sign Pete Alonso. It is doable. Just because you sign Juan Soto does not mean the Mets are automatically out on Pete Alonso. It's the contrary. But other teams are going to be in on Pete Alonso. Let's be honest. The Cubs could be in on him, right? You could talk about a world where the Giants are in on him, right? He's going to have a market, obviously. So we're going to pay attention to the Pete Alonso talk, but I didn't want to delve too far into Pete Alonso because I have a video dropping about Pete Alonso tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's a little bit of a teaser there. I will be talking about Pete Alonso, and maybe if the Mets don't re-sign him, a compare and contrast in terms of the pros and the cons of Pete Alonso and another first base free agent. You could probably guess who it is. I won't name it, but you could probably guess who it is. That video is coming out, so be on the lookout for that. And hit the notifications button on this YouTube channel to get notified when that video drops. Again, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But let's talk about Willy Adames. Oh, this is a loaded conversation. Are you all ready for it? Are you all ready for this Willy Adames conversation? The live chat poll is asking you all, do you believe the latest Willy Adames reports surrounding the New York Mets? I believe them. But I believe them in terms of being a backup option to Pete. Because if Pete Alonso walks, obviously you're going to need to reshape up your infield. Whether it's signing an external candidate, free agent for first base, or moving Mark Vientos over to first base, that will create some space for you in the infield. And Willy Adames has gone on record saying he is open to a position change, whether it's second base or third base, whatever team it may be. But a lot of Mets fans are weary about this conversation surrounding Willy Adames because of not the contract value, right? And there was a distinct report from an unconfirmed source. I believe it was Mike Rodriguez on X, stating that the Mets already have an offer out for Willy Adames worth 6 years. I believe it was north of $160 million, somewhere between the 22 to $23 million AAV mark. I'm going to say it. I'm going to be honest. I don't believe in that because I don't think that the Mets are going to make a decision on Willy Adames until Pete Alonso makes his decision in terms of which team he wants to play for in 2025. I think that Willy Adames is a strict backup option should Pete Alonso walk. And I actually prefer to have Pete Alonso on my team. But if you're selling me on Willy Adames coming over to the Mets and reuniting with David Stearns, I'm buying into it. And I know the primary discussion and the focal point is going to be the defense of Willy Adames. He hasn't played any third base in his career. He's only played a very limited sample size of second base in his career with the Tampa Bay Rays. He's been a primary shortstop. And obviously, Francisco Lindor is there to stay for the New York Mets at the shortstop position. But Willy Adames was once thought of as one of the best defensive shortstops in the league. And that wasn't too long ago. That was in 2022 and 2023. And in 2024, something changed. I don't know what changed. I don't know if it was mechanics. I don't know what it was. Confidence, you name it. It could be anything. There was a distinct difference in his defensive production from 2023 to 2024. In 2023, 14 errors, 8 defensive runs saved, which is your basic, sabermetric defensively. There's a lot of, fielding statistics that you can throw out there, but I don't really like to talk about defense from a statistical standpoint, but I guess in this case you have to. And in which case you have to with Pete Alonso and the guy that I'll be talking about in my video later on tonight that'll drop. But again, this is the compare and contrast here between the defensive years that Willy Adames had. In 2024, Willy Adames had 20 errors and a -16 DRS at shortstop. So if he's declining, presumably, at the position that he knows well, how are we expected to believe in him transitioning to a new position in third base, which is a valid argument. It's a valid argument. I don't know if I believe in that argument being a primary reason to not go after Willy Adames in terms of the Pete Alonso walks. I think that if you're a shortstop and if you've been playing middle infield all your life, I really do think as a baseball player, It's different in terms of the angle, in terms of the exit velocity on balls that you'll be fielding. But I think that it's an easier adjustment than people think. But again, you won't know that until you take the risk on Willy Adames and actually move positions, which I'm not sure if David Stearns is willing to do. Even if he knows Willy Adames well, how sure are we that he is going to trust an infield where you have Mark Vientos playing a brand new position at first base and also Willy Adames playing a brand new position at third base? Now, I would not mind that combination at all because I think it would work out, especially in terms of replacing the offensive numbers as best as possible. You're not going to replace them through and through with Willy Adames in terms of the power numbers that you'd lose with Pete. But this is a pretty decent plan C option for the New York Mets. Should Pete Alonso walk, one, and should they fail to sign an external free agent candidate, which is the second domino that would have to fall for this to happen. And then you get into the discussion, right, of what happens with Luis Angel Acuna? What happens with Ronnie Mauricio, who's coming back? Like, how are you going to work the young talent on this team into the fold? And so I don't have the answers to that. I don't think anybody does have the answers to that. But if you're in a championship caliber type season, right, where you're expecting to make it further, or you would hope to make it further than where you were last season in the NLCS, are we going to rely on a youthful infield outside of Francisco Lindor, right? In terms of Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio coming back from injury, are we going to rely on that? And for me, the answer is probably no. And Willy Adames, it's not like he's 30, 31 years old. He's entering the prime of his career, and he's about to be 29 years old. It's also important to remember that. But I do have to acknowledge the defensive drop-off that Willy Adames incurred last season. That has to be acknowledged. Jameson is saying Arenado at third, Adames at second, Vientos at first, Soto and Burns. I like Nolan Arenado. I like that name a lot. I know other Mets fans in this fan base are probably even more wary of a guy like Nolan Arenado, given the age and maybe some of the offensive decline, etc. But I like Nolan Arenado. Do I see that happening? I see Willy Adames as more realistic for third base than a trade for Nolan Arenado. But Jameson, I feel what you're saying, and I can see the vision there. I can see the vision. Oliver saying if Pete went oppo at Yankee Stadium, he'd hit 60 homers easily in 2025. AB saying if the Sox are offering Mayer as the front end deal, I think the Mets have a chance to compete. But if they offer just one of Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal, and Christian Campbell, he's a Red Sox. I think you're talking about in relation to Garrett Crochet. I think that's what you're talking about, which is a very valid point as well that AB's bringing up as it relates to the pitching front in Garrett Crochet. And I agree with this. This is exactly what I'm trying to get at here in this conversation, is that Adames is a pretty good backup option to Pete, right? Obviously, you're not going to have Adames if Pete is on the roster. I would prefer Pete Alonso on the roster because I think that, you know, he's got a lot more to offer as a New York Met. But again, if you're trying to sell me on Willy Adames as a backup option, maybe even a plan C to Pete Alonso leaving, I'm going to accept that all day long. I'm sorry, I just am. And I'd accept it more so than an Alex Bregman signing. Although I wouldn't be mad at Alex Bregman. So again, there's a lot of different routes, as you are hearing in this stream, that the Mets can take. And this is another question. Can Vientos actually play first base at a high caliber, which we don't know, which is part of the other risk factor that you would have to incur as David Stearns, who is generally a defensive-minded guy as it is. But all right, I got about 5 more minutes here with you all. Obviously, I want to just, on the flip side, obviously the drop-off in Willy Adames' defensive production, let's not act like he is not a great infielding hitter, right? With the offense and his production in the offensive category. I know he only hit 217 in 2023 in 149 games. I understand that. 29 home runs in that year, only 80 RBIs in the 717 OPS. But the leap that he took from 2023 to 2024 offensively was awesome. 161 games in 2024, 251 batting average, 32 home runs, over 100 RBIs at 112, and a 794 OPS. That guy has gap-to-gap power. Yes, he strikes out a lot in Willy Adames, but at the end of the day, in terms of replacing home run production, he can put the ball out of the ballpark, and he can also be a middle-of-the-order hitter for you. So I like the upside of Willy Adames' bat. I really do. And the last thing that I wanted to tell you all, I tweeted this out yesterday. And again, this is like, it's hard to make these sort of dream wish list scenarios this early on into the offseason, but I attempted to do so, knowing that the Mets have a lot of money to spend. They're going, as of right now, into the 2025 season and into this offseason, allocating $151 million. This is how I kind of broke down my dream wish list for the New York Mets this offseason. By re-sign candidates, signing candidates via free agency, and also trading for candidates to backfill certain spots in the bullpen and center field in Lane Thomas and Devin Williams. This is CP's quote-unquote dream big offseason wish list for the New York Mets. And you see here, Pete Alonso, in terms of re-signing, Sean Manaea, Ryan Stanek, Juan Soto, Max Fried, AJ Minter signing via free agency and trading for the likes of Lane Thomas and Devin Williams. And I don't want to get into this list too much. I will make standalone videos about pretty much each one of these guys, but that is my dream big wish list. So to answer your questions, Pete Alonso versus Willy Adames, you have it right here on the right side of your screen. Pete Alonso for me. And that would add up to just about $149 million added onto the payroll, which would take the Mets to an even $300 million in a perfect world. So that is what I am assessing for the New York Mets. All right, just under 50 minutes. I appreciate everyone being in here. Thank you for dropping those comments. Continue to hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel for more Mets content. Again, I appreciate it. Video dropping today, a little bit limited on time today, which is why I'm going live so early. Let me know in the comment section if you're catching the replay, if you have any questions or if you have any comments about what we talked about today. It's your boy CP. I appreciate you all. Let's go Mets. Again, it's going to be a very, very impactful and huge offseason for our New York Mets. I appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.